like the one they don't use on a daily basis
Yeah.
to model. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like they're not using the best versions of those gears often. So that's probably a big part of it.
Yeah. I don't know. I like it. To me, it sounds better. It's part of my workflow, and I enjoy it. So
Sick, dude. Yeah. I remember when I first read the Zen and the Art of Mixing, and Mixer Man is talking about, analog summing. I was like, dude, this is so out of my league.
yeah.
Like, when am I going to be able to afford like a summing bus? But I don't even think he still does it. But there is what to be. I know people love it. People say.
And
I actually spoke with Vance Powell recently, and he's like, he also is a Burl converter guy, and he was talking about like the differences between like analog and digital, and he said like, at the end of the day, we're analog beings, and so like we don't exist in zeros and ones, So there's something more organic about the way the analog thing sounds to us that it just vibes better,
Yeah, and on the Burl thing for me is I always used 192s from Avid, and I switched to Burl. And I got the demo, some Lynx, some Apollos, and the Burls were they had a better analog feel. They just felt more real, more transparent, and I love them. That's why I use Burl. So
yeah. Wait, let's jump back into mixing a little bit. So are you referencing other tracks while you mix? Are you not interested in listening to other tracks while you mix? And
to an extent. Sometimes I'll definitely use references, especially if the band has a specific sound that they really want to go for. But most of the time for me it's a quick little like, where's the depth at maybe on the reference track that I'm using. But sometimes I find myself being more like frustrated and being like, well, this is what the band likes and this is kind of what the band wanted to hear. But I was like, they're not necessarily that. And then sometimes, the elephant in the room is the talent level is not that. So,
sure.
You can only work with what you got. But sometimes I get a little more frustrated where it's just like I'm trying to reference something. There was a time, probably a couple of years ago, I was doing a lot more reference tracks. And I was just kind of like, I kind of told myself, I was like, Taylor, like, you're helping a band create a sound. And why make them sound like something that's already done? So I use reference tracks to a point, but at the same time, it's just like, no, like I want to create my own guitar tones. I want to make sure my drum tones are my drum tones or the band's drum tones. But Ozone has a great reference switch flip. That's great to reference a mix back and forth. So we'll do that. Sometimes I'll also import maybe a mix that I did a couple months earlier or a year ago just to kind of see where I'm at and be like, is this better than what I've done in the last couple months? So done that too, just to make sure, is my low end tight? Are my vocals clear and up front? Stuff like that. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but.
No, that's really cool. Yeah, tell me, I guess, do you have any like tried and true techniques that you use in mixing that maybe other people don't use?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have any like, if this is my, as you say, the sauce or anything like that.
We're not up to the sauce yet. We're almost there.
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything like that. It's more of just, I think your ears are the best instrument in the room, and if you use those properly, then things will sound better. But parallel compression on things. I think having the right mastering engineer makes all the difference in the world. That could be maybe one of my mix techniques is make sure you get a mastering engineer that doesn't ruin your mix.
Totally.
So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say, other than kind of industry standard stuff, I think it's more of a luxury thing, but like for my reverbs are all my Berkasti M7. I don't use any, as far as like, if it's an effect reverb, like I really want to use this reverb as an effect, I'll use like Valhalla or something like that. But like my main drum reverbs and vocal reverbs all go through my Berkasti M7. and I don't think there's a better sounding reverb unit on the planet.
Nice. And the plugins that, use those algorithms don't sound the same?
I haven't. No, it's just even my intern, anytime, he's sitting here doing a mix and, it's like, all right, comes time to get to the vocals and we pump the vocal through the Bricasti. He's just like, you can't, like, you don't get the muddiness. You don't get the, sometimes when you have some reverbs, the top end, it gets too washy and not clear.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bricasti M7 is just like, pick the size of the room you want and go with it.
Sick.
So, I don't do a lot of EQing on the Bricasti or even like on the track itself, on the reverb aux send. So it just sits there and it works. So
nice.
Yeah, like I said, I don't really have anything secretive that I'm like, ooh, if the world found out about this, I'd be ruined.
Well, no.
So
I don't think anybody does, but yeah, totally. Do you approach like a pop song in terms of mixing different than you would like, let's say, a rock song? Like, do you do anything different?
Yeah. On a pop song, you want the mid range a little more clear, just because usually there's more vocal stuff happening. There might be some more synth stuff going on. So, you want to have more room for the mid range, so everything seems a little clearer and more upfront. Mid range is great for adding fullness and stuff like that, but sometimes the more mid-range you add, the less clarity you get. So, having that room in the mid-range is definitely key on the pop stuff, and that's what gets the vocal to sit well. And, you get the reverbs on the pop stuff. You hear more of the reverbs and the delays and stuff like that. So you want to make sure you have the room for all of those things happening. So, but, on a rock record, mid-range on guitars is so key. And it's funny when a lot of guitar players are like, oh, I scoop the mids. I'm like, yeah, of course you scoop the mids because you sit in your bedroom and play by yourself and it sounds better because it's clearer. But mid-range is a huge factor in fullness on guitars and in the mix. So, you want to make sure you keep those mids and stuff like that. So, and then, vocals too on a rock song, depending on the song, of course, the vocals don't need to be as upfront, especially if they're a little more aggressive. You can kind of keep those a little, just in the mix
tucked
or
away.
Slightly, just a little on top. But some of these pop vocals nowadays, man, they're so freaking loud. And, it seems like the mix is a football field behind the rest of the vocals.
Oh my gosh.
But that happens. And, you hear it in rock records too. I worked with Alan Dowshez a lot, who's a mastering engineer, and he grew up, he's been around for forever, and, he's evolved through records and stuff like that. But I remember him always telling me, he's just like, he would say these to my mixes too, but he'd just be like, man, vocals are so freaking loud nowadays. He's like, it's unbelievable. So, yeah, you have the pop records where you can get the vocals up front more and get them a little more shiny and shimmery. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I feel like everybody's got a sweet spot for their vocals. I feel like it's not, different mixers will mix it in different ways, in terms of how, ahead of the rest of the mix it is.
Yeah, and it also depends on the band too. At the end of the day, I'm working for the band, so I want to make sure they like the mix. And I've worked with vocalists where they're like, vocals aren't loud enough, and I'm just like, okay, we'll keep turning them up.
Yeah. Usually when an artist asks me to turn up a vocal, like, it starts to bury something else in the mix, and like, okay, there goes like part of the snare drum or whatever it is,
Yeah.
Because it just starts masking everything.
Yep. But, yeah, it's definitely, it's
a moving target.
Yep. I work with one band. They're a pop punk band, and their guitar player does a lot of awesome lead stuff, like really fast moving guitar work, and it's happening while vocals are happening too. And it's just like, what do you want to win? Do you want to hear more of the guitar work or do you want to hear more of the vocal? And mixing their stuff it's a fun challenge to go, okay, how do I make these work? And it's just like, okay, pan the lead, to 11 off to the left. So it still sounds like it's in the center, but it's a little off to the left and not exactly where the vocal is sitting in the center, to get that to work and stuff like that. But yeah, something always loses. That's what I always tell bands. It's like there's almost
a compromise.
So much frequency space that things can take up. So
yeah, I feel like that's like the move with like, or this is like the move to avoid if you're like new in production. Is like sometimes less is more. I feel like everyone's always trying to squeeze everything in.
Oh yeah,
and like when I'm mixing, for a band, let's say that is newer at production, and they're just trying to squeeze as much as possible in there. It's like, dude, this mix is impossible.
Yep.
Like, how am I supposed to fit like a cello with the bass guitar, with the vocalist, with like kind of like warm guitars? Like, you can't get it all in there. You got to decide.
Yeah.
I
see that constantly,
all the time,
especially in the tracks that I get. For just mixing, they're just like, "Hey Taylor, here's our song. Can you mix it?" And it's
exactly.
Just like, man, like, what is this track for? What is this track for? As opposed to like when I'm tracking the artist, I'm like, yeah, we don't need that. Like, we don't need to do this because this instrument is doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually had a session today. I'm working on a production, and like we just cut stuff. It was so fun.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, we don't need that flute. Let's get rid of it.
Yep.
Yeah, done.
Absolutely.
I was like, I should do more muting. This is great.
Yeah, it's I mean, we could talk about how I work with bands of like, I'll take their 5-minute song and turn it into a 3-minute and 15-second song.
Yeah,
because it's like
cut the bridge.
It's mainly like, hey, this is a great riff, but why is it 32 bars long? Like, let's make it 16 or 8. And, but that's a lot more in the younger artists that come in. And I was that artist too. Like back when my band recorded, be like, oh, this breakdown's awesome. Let's play it for 32 bars. And it's just like, no, like you can play it for 8 and still get the point across. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like we've talked about mixing and we've talked about production. Let's jump into the sauce segment. People can have a listen to some. This is actually, the genre is a little bit different than the stuff we've talked about. This is maybe more on the indie acoustic side of things. But you sent me a really cool track called "Don't Let Me Go" by a band called The Regular.
Yeah.
And let's just have a listen. We can jump into it.
Cool.
And we can talk about it.
She was walking down the road, rosy cheeks and a head of gold. And I was driving down the street, nowhere to go, nowhere to be. So I shot out the window to say hi. She came to me, asked for a ride. I asked her where she'd like to go. She said, I don't know, don't take me home. So I asked again where she'd rather be. She said, drive out west to we hit the sea. So I gassed the car, it was time to go. And she grabbed my face and kissed me so. We couldn't get back. Drove through the day and through the night. Rode through the storm and held on tight. And now that we had barely met, left our lives back to forget.
Yeah. I love it. I love when it builds up and the drums get bigger and the energy just gets exciting. Yeah, great track. It's like very much music I would listen to.
Awesome.
So I'm super digging it. The guitar intro reminds me of that Eddie Vedder track from Into the Wild. Kind of, I don't know. Yeah, I think I mentioned to you before.
Yeah.
But is that a real banjo?
That is a real banjo. Yep.
Yeah, I love a good banjo. I'm like a massive Sufjan Stevens fan.
Nice.
So that I can always dig a little bit of that indie acoustic stuff. So yeah, tell me a bit about that track. Like what went into it. I know you did it like maybe some of it live in a house. I don't really know.
Yeah.
Give me the deets.
I mean, in Denver, Colorado, we have most of our houses have basements. So my studio has been redone in the basement to have my studio. But for this